I hated term papers when I was a kid because I just think I didn't understand the exercise. My teacher would say something like, all right, you got to write a 10-page paper there, and it has to have 10 sources, and I want you to make that thing about Julius Caesar. And so then I got to go and do some, research to find out what the facts are. But I think in my brain I was like, well, it's like a book report, right? I just repeat back to you what the inarguable facts about Julius Caesar are, and then that's that. It never occurred to me that Julius Caesar was alive like 2,000 plus years ago. Like, we might not know everything for sure. There might be a few questions to ask or controversies to consider. No, I just thought I was doing a book report. Like, the formula for this would be that I go and I get an encyclopedia and I turn to Julius Caesar. That'd be in the J's. And then I just read it and take some notes on the facts. And then I guess to have a second source, I just find a different brand of encyclopedia and also go to Volume J and then just read their Julius Caesar article. And then I guess paraphrase the two articles so it kind of sounds like I said it, just a little bit dumber than how the encyclopedia says it. And then I guess for the bibliography, I just write number 1, encyclopedia, page 211. Number 2, other encyclopedia, page 130. And then I'm probably only going to actually write about 5 pages of actual content. So then after that, you just real quick at the end, change it to Courier New font, bump it up to about 14.5 point, bump in your margins to like 2 inches, add a header and a footer, and make sure that every single paragraph ends with one word on the next page. And then boom, you got a 10-page paper that should get you a solid C-, and that'll get it done. But eventually, I think I caught on to what they were wanting, that being that I was supposed to go back and find the sources closest to the questions and topics I was interacting with that could give me actual data, whether it's charts and facts and figures or an eyewitness account. And then what I'm supposed to do is interpret that data and like make some kind of point or observation about it. Well, by that point, it was far too late, and I'd already gotten that C- on that paper on Julius Caesar in 8th grade or whatever it was. But great news. Thanks to you being here and the Book of Esther existing, I now have the opportunity to atone for past mistakes and talk about how we actually know anything about the world of Esther, apart from just reading an encyclopedia article and hoping that it's right. You see, the funny thing about Persia is that it's not that much older than, say, Rome in the grand scheme of things. And we know a lot of stuff about Rome. And lots of people wrote things down. Latin persisted for a long time. Greek persisted for a long time. Roman law and Roman culture persisted for a long time. So it seems like a long time ago. But really, we got a pretty good sense of what was going on back then. But you bounce back another 500 years to the Persian Empire, and you bounce east 1,000+ miles to the Persian Empire, and it gets real vague. We do not have tons and tons of sources from eyewitnesses who can tell us what was going on there. History, as we know it, was definitely a discipline. Like, that was a thing that people did at the time of the Roman Empire, but it was a pretty new idea at the time of the Book of Esther, around or just a little after 500 BC. So as you and I are trying to flesh out the Persian world that Queen Esther lived in, we become really dependent on 2 types of sources. The first of which are 3 prominent Greek historians who had a foot in 2 worlds back in the day. They were Greek, but almost all of the Greek people back then were also kind of Persian. Because with the exception of the very, very, very far Western Greeks like in Athens and Sparta and even further west than that, all of the Greek world at one point or another was touched by the rule and the culture of the Persians way off in the east. These are culturally bilingual people. The names of these 3 guys are going to come up a ton because they are eyewitnesses to the stuff that happened in the Persian Empire. The first one is a dude named Ctesias. It is not spelled at all like it sounds. It's Ctesias. I don't understand it either. We're just going to roll with it. That's how Ctesias is spelled. This guy was born on the west coast of modern-day Turkey, so in the zip code of Ephesus, if you're familiar with that. And he ended up getting roped into the life of Artaxerxes II. Now, Artaxerxes II was a very long-tenured Persian king who came along a little bit later, roughly 100 years after the stuff we're looking at here in the Book of Esther. And this Theseus guy, he was a personal physician to Artaxerxes II, and as part of that, it means that he was also involved in a little bit of Persian dynastic crisis, that is a little civil war born out of trying to decide who gets to be the next king of Persia. So this guy saw some stuff, but the history that we get from him is kind of a mishmash of sort of what you and I would imagine a history book to be like. Impartial, just give me the facts, tell me what happened, but also something that looks very mythic and Greek, like a narrative, heroic storytelling style of doing business. Theseus is not a super reliable, straight historical source on Persia, but there's a lot of reading between the lines we can do to get a sense of a bunch of things, and he's the only coverage we have for a few bits of Persian history. The second really important source / pseudo-historian that I definitely would have needed to familiarize myself if I were writing a paper on this in 8th grade is a dude named Xenophon. This guy has a pretty impressive resume. He is from Athens. He is a philosopher. And maybe you're wondering, I've heard of some philosophers from Athens. I wonder if he ever ran into, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. Yes, as a matter of fact, he did. He was a student of Socrates. So that means a classmate of Plato? That's a pretty big deal. And apparently back then, sometimes the philosophers also killed people with swords, so he also signed up to be a mercenary from Athens to fight in support of a Persian king in that same succession crisis I mentioned a minute ago with Theseus. And Xenophon was actually on the other side of that fight from Theseus. So again, we're talking about almost 100 years after the events of the Book of Esther. You got two guys, Cyrus the Younger and Artaxerxes II. They both want to be king. They both recruited mercenaries to fight on their side. Theseus gives us a story from one side, Xenophon from the other side. This gets more interesting yet, though, because after Artaxerxes II, who Theseus was with, defeats Cyrus the Younger, who Xenophon was with, all those mercenaries from out west in Greece who Xenophon was with, they all had to hightail it out of there. It's like this great big cool chase scene for them to get out from behind enemy lines without getting killed or enslaved because they were fighting on the wrong side. And so Xenophon gives us this whole dramatic story of trying to get back out of the east and back out to the safe havens of Greek territory. It's super dramatic and super interesting, but his biggest contribution is a work called the Cyropaedia. That's the same suffix from which we get encyclopedia or Wikipedia, and it's all about Cyrus the Great. Now, Cyrus lived way before Xenophon, but Xenophon had a thing for Cyrus. He really admired that guy. And so we wanted to tell the story of Cyrus, but also to hold out Cyrus as a model of what the ideal leader looks like. Because Xenophon is not first and foremost just trying to nail the details of the story, he's trying to make an argument and offer something of a political treatise. His stuff, it's a varying reliability, usually considered to be better than Theseus, but certainly not 20th century, dry, bland, just the facts kind of history either. And that brings us to the best of what we've got from these Greek-ish, Persian-ish sources. And that's a guy who's often called the father of history. This is Herodotus of Halicarnassus. And Herodotus' name is spelled exactly like you'd figure, H-E-R-O-D. So like Herod the Great, but then just put a Otis on the end, O-T-U-S, Herodotus. He lived from 484 to 425 BC. So he was a little kid when Queen Esther was going through all of the stuff that we're reading about in her book, if we assume Xerxes to be properly identified as the king in the Book of Esther, and we'll talk more about that later on. Herodotus is culturally Greek, but the city he's from, Halicarnassus, is entirely Persian by the time he's born. So he's born in a Persian country, and Herodotus gives us the most by a wide margin. Right here, where did I put it? I've had this on my desk for a long time in preparation for these conversations with you. This right here, listen to that. Still going. Got another 50 pages right there. That is the Histories by Herodotus. It's a big work, and it is massive in its scope. It covers the lives of Cyrus the Great, Darius the Great, and Xerxes in massive detail, as well as other stuff. And it looks like Herodotus went around and did the work. He pounded pavement. He interviewed people. He went to the battlefields and the palaces, and he actually gathered the data to do history in a way that kind of looks like modern history. Now, he still has a foot in the world of the mythical and in the world of, how can I put this, Greek drama. All of it has that Greek dramatic flair, like, I can't think of the name. What's the one that's super creepy with like the mom thing? Oedipus Rex. So Herodotus indulges in long digressions and all kinds of rabbit trails that'll take you into all kinds of little corners of ancient history you didn't see coming. So I feel like he and I maybe have a little bit in common in that way. I think the background stuff is really important too. And the way he tells the stories, it's not always 100% reliable. It doesn't always match with everybody else's account. And he is very much not afraid to paint a personality when he's talking about these big characters. He's not afraid to make moral pronouncements or to warn you about the folly of making this mistake or that. He also really liked the Greeks, and so a lot of his story focuses on the conflict that we haven't talked much about yet, but we will, between the Persians and the Greeks way out west, the Greeks like Athens and Sparta. So, hey, just between you and me, I want to do you a solid here. If you're in 8th grade and you have a whole project term paper due tomorrow on Persia, you definitely want these 3 guys to be right at the top of your sources. They have to be on the list. These are the big ones. Next time around, we're going to talk about how we know stuff about Persia from actually the full-on Persians, including the kings of Persia. They left us some stuff as well, and that stuff very much helps to flesh out the picture of what we're dealing with here. Good luck on your paper, and remember, Courier New, 14.5-point font, 2.5-inch margins, headers and footers. Make sure one word bleeds onto the next page at the end of each paragraph. You're welcome. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.